Hello and welcome, students, to another episode of History at Home. In today's episode, we get to look at one of the more exciting artifacts in all of ancient history. Today, we're going to talk about mummies. But before we get to the mummies, we're going to talk about some of the famous pharaohs that we've examined together in class. The first pharaoh that we looked at was Pharaoh Narmer. And Narmer is responsible for uniting Upper and Lower Egypt. Some texts will also refer to him as Menes. We're going to simply just call him Narmer, and he united Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BCE, which is a time period that Egyptologists refer to as the pre-dynastic time period. We also don't know a ton about him personally, but we believe the following items to be true. Again, we believe he unified Upper and Lower Egypt, and we think he did this because we found an artifact that we today call the Narmer Palette. So in class, we looked at the Narmer Palette, and we looked at this very famous scene right here, and we said that looks like it's Narmer executing the former king of Lower Egypt. We talked about this scene over here, and it looks like it's Narmer's army executing soldiers from Lower Egypt. And again, if you look here, you see the heads of these soldiers between their feet. And then down here, we saw kind of a very vague scene. And we said that possibly could be symbolic of the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. We also said that he is responsible for creating the double crown of Egypt. Again, this signifies his authority over Upper and Lower Egypt. And here's that double crown that we talked about and looked at in class. You have the white crown of Upper Egypt pictured there, and you have the red crown of Lower Egypt pictured there. We also believe that he reigned from his capital city in Memphis, and we said he's going to establish Egypt's first dynasty. Then we made a big leap in time to the Old Kingdom time period, and we looked at Khufu. And with Khufu, we said we have really two artifacts from him. We have a very tiny one, which is this 3-inch tall ivory statue of him. And then we have this huge burial tomb, over 480 feet tall, which is obviously the Great Pyramid at Giza. So when we focus in on Khufu, again, we said we don't know a ton about him personally, but we believe the following items to be true. We believe he was the first one to build a pyramid at Giza around 2550 BCE, again during the Old Kingdom time period, and we said that this is a marvel of human engineering. It took around 23 years to build, and it needed around 20,000 to 30,000 workers to construct. These workers were conscripted farmers paying their burden tax, not slaves. It also has somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.3 million limestone blocks, and each of these blocks weigh on average 5,000 pounds. All of this work and all of this hardship was built for some rich dude's dead body. We also said that there's a lot more going on here than just simply Khufu's pyramid. We have Khufu's pyramid pictured there, but we also have Khufu's ship, which is buried right outside his pyramid. We have Khufu's son Khafre's pyramid at this location. We have Khufu's grandson Menkaru's pyramid as well. We have mastabas, which are single room tombs that were built for people that served in Khufu's court and for his queens. We also have the Sphinx, which we believe to be the guardian of the pyramids located here. We have the huge city of Cairo kind of creeping into the frame, and then we have the Sahara Desert as well. All right, ready to move on to the good stuff, the mummies. So, got a question for you. Why did the Egyptians mummify their dead? Really, this answer is composed of two parts. First, the Egyptians had a very strong belief in the afterlife, and you should already get that sense from what we talked about in class. We looked at a myth called the Land of the Dead, which shows this strong belief in the afterlife, where you have people that die each and every day in Egypt going onto a ship down into Duat, where they enter the temple of Osiris for judgment, and they get the heart taken out of the ka and put onto a scale to be weighed against the feather of the truth. So we should have a good insight into their strong belief into the afterlife. Something else you may not have known is that they also believed that one soul, or Ka, needed to recognize their body in order to live forever in the afterlife. So that's why the Egyptians need to mummify their dead. They need the soul to be able to recognize the actual body in order to live forever in the afterlife. So that's why we get all these artifacts of mummies. This is a 3,000-year-old body of the pharaoh Ramses V, and this is a mummified, embalmed body, hopefully with the idea being that his Ka could recognize his body and use it in the afterlife. There's also actually two different types of mummification. There's one called accidental mummification, and the one that we're going to focus on today purposeful mummification. If you're accidentally mummified, that means that you were preserved accidentally by nature. If you were purposefully mummified, that means that you were embalmed by some other human. And here's a picture of an accidental mummy and a picture of a embalmed mummy. Again, accidental mummy, the most famous accidental mummy of them all. This is Otzi the Iceman, and we're going to look at him a little bit later on with our studies in Egypt. And then you have another mummy from ancient Egypt. So, embalming, this is the purposeful mummification. This is preserving a dead body from decay by using different chemicals. And with that statement being said, it kind of gives us two questions that arise. Why do dead bodies decay in general? And what chemicals help stop this decaying process? Well, you may not realize it at this moment, but you are covered on the inside and the outside with millions and trillions, really, of different types of bacteria. And when living items die, the bacteria begin to decay away at the flesh and bone and muscle and sinew and all the stuff that makes you. And we can see this decaying process in this series of photographs of a pig. So you have a recently deceased pig right here, and then you have at day 65, little less than just simply bone in that photo. And you can see the decaying process and the bacteria just decaying away at the flesh until it's just simply bone. So, with that being said, how can we stop the decaying process and preserve a human body? Well, here's an idea. All life needs moisture. So we need to remove all the moisture from the body. If there's no moisture on the body, no bacteria can survive, and therefore it won't decay. So the ancient Egyptians actually kind of realized this. They're going to use a product called natron, and natron is a chemical. It's actually a salt that the Egyptians will use to help preserve a dead body. And this works by simply removing or stripping away the moisture from a corpse. So we're going to look at this embalming process, and we're going to make this overly simplified. It's a little bit more complicated than what I'm going to present with, but this is kind of just the Spark Notes edition of embalmment. First, we're going to take the corpse to the Ibu, and the Ibu is the place of purification. And once we get it there, we're going to wash down the body with wine and Nile water. Then we're going to cut open the sides right around the rib cage and remove organs like the lungs, liver, intestines, and stomach. We're going to store these organs in canopic jars, and we're going to eventually bury them with the dead body. So here's a series of canopic jars, and on the top of the jars are different gods from the Egyptian pantheon, and these are the organs that would go inside of those jars. We have to make sure, though, that we do not damage the heart and that we leave the heart within the body. The Egyptians believed that the heart was the center of emotion and intelligence, so that was an organ that pretty much always stayed behind within the mummy. Finally, we're going to take the brain out of the mummy through the nose. We're going to take a giant hook, stick it up through the nostril, scramble up the brain, and pull it out bit by bit. And this x ray image shows you what that would look like up through the nostril into the cranium. Then they're going to pull out chunks bit by bit by bit. Step two, after we have the body pretty much hollowed out and all the organs out, we're going to stuff it and bury it with natron. We're going to fill and cover the body for about 40 days with natron. Remember, the overall goal is to remove all of the moisture, and this will help preserve the body from decay since no bacteria will be able to survive on the body. Essentially, with all of this salt, what we're trying to do is turn the human body into beef jerky. Step three, after those 40 days, we're going to remove all of the natron and we're going to begin stuffing the body with different spices to make it smell better, rags and plants to give it a more lifelike appearance. And then we're going to wrap the mummy up in that famous mummy wrap. Within the wrappings, we're going to include items called amulets. Amulets are items that are wrapped up within a mummy for protection. So here's an Isis knot, a famous symbol in Egyptian artwork that you'll see sometimes, and this is supposed to protect the body on its trip down into Duat. And this is a plummet amulet, which will help keep the person balanced in the next life. And then we're going to get to the final step. After we have the mummy wrapped up, we're going to put it into this coffin or sarcophagus. And King Tut, the next figure that we're going to look up in Egyptian history, is famous for having an outer sarcophagus that had three separate coffins inside. And here's an example of his most famous coffin, the one that's made out of solid gold with the crook and flail, the royal signs of authority in Egypt, in both hands. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.